When we think about sexual pleasure, human culture almost always focuses on physical anatomy. We think about heart rates, skin sensitivity, and physical touch. But from a biological standpoint, the most powerful, complex, and sensitive sexual organ in the human body isn't between your legs. It is sitting right between your ears. Your brain weighs just 3 pounds, yet during sexual climax, it undergoes one of the most explosive neural transformations known to neuroscience. In fact, functional magnetic resonance imaging, or fMRI, scans show that during an orgasm, almost the entire brain lights up in a burst of metabolic activity, consuming massive amounts of oxygen and glucose simultaneously. To understand what happens when the brain reaches its peak, we first have to step back and look at how sexual arousal builds up in the central nervous system. The process begins long before any physical touch occurs. Arousal can be triggered by sensory inputs, a sight, a smell, a touch, or even a purely psychological thought or fantasy generated in the cerebral cortex. The moment your brain perceives an erotic stimulus, it activates an ancient network deep within the brain known as the limbic system. The limbic system is the emotional and motivational core of the human brain, containing structures like the amygdala, the hippocampus, and the hypothalamus. Once activated, the hypothalamus acts as the chief conductor. It sends electrical and hormonal signals down the spinal cord through the autonomic nervous system. This triggers your fight or flight pathway to shift into gear, causing your heart rate to accelerate, your blood vessels to dilate, and your breathing to shallow. Adrenaline spikes, heightening your awareness and sharpening your physical senses. Simultaneously, the brain's primary reward pathway, specifically the ventral tegmental area and the nucleus accumbens, starts flooding your neural pathways with a neurotransmitter called dopamine. Now, there is a common myth that dopamine is the chemical of pleasure itself, but neuroscientists know that dopamine is actually the chemical of anticipation, desire, and craving. It is the exact same neurotransmitter that drives addiction, motivates us to seek food when we are hungry, and keeps us playing a video game or gambling. Dopamine sharpens your focus, heightens your sensitivity, and locks your brain into a state of goal-oriented drive. It creates the intense anticipation that fuels sexual desire. As dopamine rises, another key chemical enters the mix: norepinephrine. Norepinephrine increases alertness and arousal, causing your pupils to dilate and your brain to become hyper-focused on the source of stimulation. At this stage, your brain is actively filtering out distractions. Background noises fade away, peripheral vision narrows, and your entire conscious mind becomes laser-focused on the physical and psychological sensations of the moment. Then comes the moment of climax, the biological threshold crossing. When stimulation reaches its critical tipping point, the brain triggers a massive, synchronized electrical discharge that cascades through the spinal cord and ignites a neurochemical tsunami across both cerebral hemispheres. First, the motor cortex and the cerebellum fire off rhythmic electrical impulses. These cause the involuntary, rhythmic muscle contractions throughout the pelvic floor and body that characterize physical orgasm. At the exact same instant, the brain's endocrine system releases a massive surge of powerful hormones directly into the bloodstream from the pituitary gland. The first major hormone to flood the system is oxytocin, often nicknamed the bonding hormone or cuddle chemical. Oxytocin surges rapidly during climax. It acts on receptors throughout the brain to promote feelings of deep emotional attachment, trust, safety, and psychological closeness. It is the exact same hormone released in massive quantities during childbirth and breastfeeding, designed by evolution to build powerful social bonds between human beings. Second, the brain releases a huge wave of endorphins, your body's built-in natural opioids. Endorphins flood the central nervous system, binding to the exact same neural receptors targeted by painkiller medications. These endorphins create an immediate sense of euphoria, physical warmth, and deep muscular relaxation. But they also serve a crucial biological purpose: pain suppression. Clinical studies have shown that during an orgasm, a person's pain threshold increases dramatically, by up to 70%. The wave of endorphins temporarily blocks pain signals traveling up the spinal cord, allowing the body to endure physical intensity without perceiving it as discomfort. At the same time, the brain receives a spike in serotonin, the neurotransmitter responsible for mood stabilization, satisfaction, and emotional well-being. If dopamine was the chemical of wanting and seeking, serotonin is the chemical of contentment and fulfillment. It tells the brain that the goal has been reached and that no further searching is necessary. Immediately following the peak of climax, the neurochemical environment inside the brain undergoes a dramatic, sudden reversal. The moment orgasm concludes, the pituitary gland releases a massive dose of a hormone called prolactin. Prolactin acts as the brain's ultimate biological circuit breaker. Its primary job is to immediately suppress dopamine production. Remember, dopamine was the fuel driving sexual arousal, focus, and desire. When prolactin floods the brain, dopamine levels plummet instantly. This sudden crash in dopamine, combined with high prolactin levels, brings on what scientists call the refractory period, the temporary window of time following climax during which further sexual arousal is biologically impossible or significantly reduced. In men, the post-orgasm prolactin spike is particularly intense, leading to a sharp drop in arousal and a strong sensation of physical lethargy. In women, prolactin levels also rise, though the female refractory period varies much more widely due to differences in receptor sensitivity and hormonal clearance rates. Prolactin is also directly responsible for post-climax drowsiness. Combined with the lingering effects of oxytocin and endorphins, prolactin acts as a natural sedative. It slows down electrical activity in the cerebral cortex, lowers your heart rate, relaxes skeletal muscles, and signals to the body that it is time to sleep and recover. This isn't laziness or lack of emotional interest. It is a mandatory physiological recovery mechanism hard-coded into the human nervous system to allow depleted neurotransmitters time to replenish. In the minutes and hours following an orgasm, as blood flow normalizes and hormone levels gradually settle back toward baseline, the brain enters a unique physiological state known as the sexual afterglow. Because the prefrontal cortex was temporarily deactivated and then bathed in a cocktail of oxytocin, endorphins, and serotonin, the brain experiences a prolonged window of reduced stress, heightened emotional openness, and mental calm. Neuroscientists have found that during this post-climax window, levels of cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone, drop significantly. This cortisol reduction can last for hours, helping to lower blood pressure, reduce systemic inflammation, and ease symptoms of anxiety and tension. Furthermore, research suggests that regular, healthy sexual climax plays an important role in long-term neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to adapt, form new neural connections, and maintain cognitive health. The surge in cerebral blood flow during orgasm delivers fresh oxygen and vital nutrients to deep brain structures, including the hippocampus, which is essential for memory consolidation and emotional regulation. Far from being just a simple physical reflex or a localized physiological response, an orgasm is one of the most comprehensive whole brain events a human being can experience. It is a masterclass in neural synchronization, a fleeting, powerful moment where fear and judgment shut down, pain vanishes, stress dissolves, and the brain's deep reward pathways fire in perfect, harmonious rhythm. Understanding what happens to your brain during climax reveals a profound truth. Sexual pleasure is not just physical. It is a deeply complex, beautifully engineered neurological experience that showcases the extraordinary power of the human brain.